From the keyboard to the boardroom, this is the Business of Esports. To the boardroom. This is the Business of Esports Podcast. I am Paul the Prophet Dawalibi. I'm joined today by my friend and co-host, the Honorable Judge Jimmy Baratta. For those of you who are new here, welcome to the official podcast of esports. What we do is we cover the most pressing gaming and esports topics and news of the week, but we look at all of it through a business and C-suite lens. We dissect, we analyze the business implications of everything happening in this industry. For our regular listeners, thank you guys for tuning in every week. Thank you for all the love, the 5-star ratings and reviews. We appreciate it. We're humbled by it. If you haven't yet, do 2 things for me. Go leave a review on the podcast, leave that 5-star review, and share the podcast with a friend, a colleague, anyone you know who may be interested in the esports industry. That's how the podcast has grown, and we really appreciate it. Jimmy, how you doing this week?
Hey, Paul, having a great week. We got a very special episode today. This is our official Thanksgiving week episode, even though Paul is both Canadian and in the Middle East, so we're double not celebrating over there. But for the rest of our listeners, our United States listeners in particular, happy Thanksgiving to everyone. We're recording, as you know, on the Wednesday before, so hopefully you get a listen to this episode and eat some turkey, because I know that's high on your priority list.
It's funny, Jimmy, because when I was in Canada, I definitely wasn't exposed to it, right? Because Thanksgiving's in October for us. When I moved to Dubai, now I'm really not exposed to it at all. Tomorrow's just another work day. I don't know, I know you guys are taking off, but there's nothing happening here except more gaming stuff. A crazy amount of gaming stuff going on here. In fact, I'm off to Saudi Arabia this weekend for gaming related, metaverse related conference, which should be fun.
Probably your 50th of the season, I believe.
Yeah. It's been crazy. But I wanted to mention, we put out the panel last week that I did at Jitex Global, which is kind of like the CES here, or the equivalent of CES. It's bigger, in fact, than CES. But and I was curious what people thought of that panel. I'd love to get feedback. And if you guys are enjoying us putting out the live content also, right? Not just the recorded content. It's recorded, but meaning of me doing a live appearance. And I'm curious if people enjoyed that. Jimmy, I know you liked it, right?
I like all of them. I mean, the PAX East ones that we've done, the ones at SALT, we got a lot of great conferences.
PAX, I know people want us back for PAX, right? I don't know. You may have to carry that torch, my friend.
I'm looking forward to it. And just a little sneak peek, we do have Comic-Con in less than 2 weeks, and there might be some content there out of Business of Esports as well. So
can you not say more than that? Are you just going to tease it, or can we not say more?
Why don't they go to the Comic-Con website and take a look at the schedule and maybe get a ticket, or they'll have to wait for us to distribute it live. But lots of great content, lots of great live events, as you mentioned, in the Middle East, here in the States. It's on fire for gaming right now. It's the end of the year. All the conferences, all the tournaments, all the new games. Come to the live show, by the way, because I want to talk about Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2, but I don't want to keep our guest waiting. He's been already super patient waiting for us to intro. So I will say every Wednesday, as you guys know, 11:30 a.m. Pacific time, we do a live stream covering all the news and events in the video game world, and we do talk about some of our favorite games there. So if you want my take on new Warzone 2.0 and Modern Warfare 2, I'll talk about it then.
Yeah, and then we may have a special live stream episode next week, right? Should I tell them that it may just be Jimmy and the Juice?
Our special Bulldog episode, Bulldog only feature episode, Jimmy and the Juice.
You guys have to decide. Is it Jimmy and the Juice? Is it the Judge and the Juice? Is it the Juice and the Judge? I don't know.
We'll do it live, I think. We'll figure it out.
You'll have to land on something. Someone who may have a good input on this, though, is a man who has made a career on the air as talent, doing esports commentating, doing sports commentating also, and sports broadcasting. So it'll be interesting to talk about those similarities and differences. We have none other than Scott Cole on the podcast. Scott, welcome to the Business of Esports Podcast.
Glad to be here. Yeah, I mean, Call of Duty has come just a little ways in the last 25 years or so.
Yeah.
I used to play Call of Duty 1 and 2 on a professional level before I started commentating it. And yeah, we were doing things in, people's basements and hotel ballrooms and stuff like that. It's come a little bit of ways to, 100 people playing to like 25 million or so dropping in on Warzone.
Scott, for our listeners who maybe don't know about you or haven't heard about you, would love a little bit of the Scott story, a little bit of your background, how you got into gaming, why you got into gaming, and maybe some information on the stuff you're working on now. Would love a little bit of, what you're working on these days.
First of all, gentlemen, love the program. Thanks so much for Phillips Norelco, kind of putting us together so we can have this discussion on esports and how it's just exploding, continuing to growing. But, I had an older brother, mom and dad bought us a NES, the original. And so to me, that was competitive gaming. He was the one I wanted to beat. And then I started beating kids in the neighborhood. And so I go back gaming like day one. And I've really never stopped over the last, 35 years or so. So, but I always wanted to be a broadcaster. I used to pretend like I'd put the camera on my dad's camcorder up and I pretend I was on Sports Center, like behind my bed. I would interview my brother like he was William Perry of the Bears, and so it's just fun to go back and watch those home videos and now see what I'm doing now. But, as far as getting into competitive esports, I had an internship with the Mavericks and the Stars, and right next door to the arena in the Hyatt Regency Dallas was a competitive gaming going down. It was Counter-Strike 1.6. They had a couple other things. They were starting to introduce Vanilla COD. I was trying to think some of the other games that were out there. Certainly Quake was big at the time. And there was a little broadcast organization called TSN, and they had rented some Microsoft video servers, and I'm sure we were serving things up in 240p. Because before then, like, you would have to take your Counter-Strike 1.6 replays and then sync it up with our audio. And people were downloading a program called Winamp. And that's how we were, I guess we got to be known as shoutcasting. So I tell people when they ask me, how far do you go back in esports? I said, there wasn't even video at the time. We were just like, we were on the radio basically over the internet. So it's crazy to think that, just how far we've come, to this point, that in 2015, I wasn't even really doing anything, but my buddy DJ Wheat, he was working at Twitch and he's like, you should get on Twitch. I was like, all right, get on Twitch. And I started playing some sports games, even though World of Warcraft is my addiction. I'm not afraid to admit it. And all that. But some people at the NFL Network saw my Twitch and my YouTube content that I was doing. And all of a sudden I went from like streaming in a guest bedroom to like $100,000, dollars an hour studio and doing a national TV show. So I quit my I was doing branding for like Fortune 50 companies, and I quit that. And next thing you know, I'm like the voice of Madden Esports and then the NBA 2K League. And so it's funny, even though there was a huge gap between that moment in Dallas, the Hyatt Regency, in like the early 2000s, that like 10, 15 years later, esports kind of had a rebirth after we had a burst of our bubble kind of back in like 2007 and 8. So I keep reminding myself that people used to laugh at the NFL. When the NFL decided that they were going to create a league, people are like, what are you doing? We already have college football. Why would anybody want to watch professional football? And that's kind of how I feel about esports over the last decade, that people kind of laughed at it. And, the only branding that we could get is people that made mouses or laptops or, monitors. But now you got folks like Phillips Norelco that are out there kind of, these brands that are banging the drum, kind of getting involved in esports and kind of pushing the ball forward. And so I just appreciate them. My beard appreciates them because, when you look good, you play good. And when, you got confidence on the air, I just do better. So I appreciate you guys having me. And it's been a long journey to finally, get to this point where every day I keep thinking, man, I'm going to have to get a job again. I'm going to have to go back and work in a cube. But somehow this esports train just keeps on rocking and running. And, I'm trying to hang on as long as I can.
Scott, it's interesting, right? Because you came from the brand world and you had all this experience working with brands, creative director at so many brands that people would know. I'm just looking at your background here, like American Airlines and Match.com and Fossil and Adidas and Burberry and Karl Lagerfeld, right? Like all these major brands that people would know and love. But you made a great point, right? Esports today is still largely what people call endemic sponsors, even though people know I hate this sort of differentiation between endemic and non-endemic.
Right.
What do you think is the trend? Like, where are we at in terms of mainstream brands understanding the opportunity?
Well, I think some of it is just taking a while. I do a lot of consulting for big brands, to tell them the benefit of esports, that it's, very authentic, and, the tough thing about, they kind of throw the sports sponsorships kind of play at esports. And I just don't think that works, because it's something that you have to be really authentic, and something that you have to try to speak the language without sounding like a poser. And that's really hard to do. It is. And so, this kind of explosion of, influencer marketing, it's what's allowed brands to kind of play in a space. You'd be able to take the community of the influencer and them kind of speak toward, this is why they think the brand is good and the brand belongs in the space. And, that's kind of what I'm doing with Phillips and Norelco right now, is kind of help first time shavers and first time college kids kind of, look your best, because we got people out there playing for like hundreds of thousands. We got people playing for millions, in esports. And I hate to say it's all about branding, but it's not just about winning that tournament. Winning that tournament puts you on a spotlight to where all of a sudden you can be a Tim the Tat Man or a Ninja or QXC or somebody like that.
Yeah, I think it's actually kind of a genius, bringing together of a brand and esports, in the sense that it does feel very authentic, right? We've seen a lot of activations that seem forced, or maybe don't hit the mark, or the brand doesn't take the time to really understand the audience. Here, it feels like this is precisely the audience you would want to go after, right? Like the gaming audience is in that perfect age group for shavers, people who are shaving.
We all got beards.
We all got beards.
We all got beards. You got to have beards to be in esports.
We all use Phillips Norelco in this room too. That's kind of the funny thing too.
But we've talked about it on this show. The number one thing the average like 12-year-old wants to be is a YouTuber gaming influencer, right? Like if you look at the list of sort of career prospects, so this like looking good piece of it actually is a big part of it, right? And I think it's it completely destroys the stereotypes, which have always been mostly untrue, right? Like that we just live in our parents' basements and we don't care what we look like. I love the fact that at the business side, it's addressing the right demographic, but on the other side, it's also just breaking these incorrect stigmas, right? Like these incorrect perceptions of what a gamer is, that they don't care about how they look, for example. So it feels very authentic. Is that, in your mind, as someone who came from the brand world, is this a key to success? Is it authenticity? Is it authority? Like what is that? What is the special sauce you think that makes a brand activation like this one work?
Yeah, I mean, I always go back to authenticity, even on any kind of, as years of doing creative direction, and now consulting in the esports space, I've always gone back to how can you be authentic, because you can gain a lot of affinity, but it can get negative real quick, because that's the nice thing about gamers is they can really elevate your brand, but they can also crush you. So, I was a social media manager through an agency for like a place like Denny's, and they were just like off the wall authentic, like even just crazy, right? To where their community kind of lifted up that brand. And I won't name any other brands that have certainly tried to step into the space and got absolutely crushed, just by thinking it was just like a run of the mill, media buy kind of thing. Because in this world where sometimes you can't skip advertisements, you can gain negative affinity just by that. Just like, hey, I want to watch this, League of Legends, championship. I don't want to sit here and watch, 10 minutes worth of ads for this certain brand. I mean, we all watch sporting events till you get to the point where you're like, man, if I see this car commercial one more time, I swear I will never buy this car brand ever. So, it's not just getting eyeballs, it's getting the right impressions. And, look at a organization like FaZe Clan when we're talking about look good, play good. They have put their branding, even from a fashion standpoint, at the paramount of what they do. So that kind of relationship that they had with Champion, and then of course I work in the NBA 2K league that is Champion sponsors all the uniforms and things like that. So these kids, as far as the culture goes, we have gotten very fashion forward in esports where, they'll have their esports organization jerseys on or kits or whatever, but you bet they got some really nice shoes on, some really nice kicks, or some sort of other glasses or things like that. So I think brands have been able to work their way in, maybe by accident, as far as some of these kind of fashion forward brands that have found themselves in the esports space.
I think it also speaks, Paul, to your comment about endemic and non-endemic, and that line really being less prevalent than we think it is, right? Where like Scott's saying, that's their authentic selves. These kids like repping Balenciaga or wearing whatever designer shoes and sweaters. And you think a gamer is one thing, but actually, using those other products is still authentic to them because those are the things that they like. It's just a misconception. Before we get too much further, Scott, the audience wants to know, you said World of Warcraft. What was your faction? Paul has to know. I have to know.
I don't want to start fights, but for some reason I was Alliance from day one, and it's not cool to be Alliance. I get it.
It is.
Paul is also Alliance.
The older you get, the cooler it is to be Alliance. Yeah, I mean, I've been playing since day one, since the beta. So, and when Lich King came back around, I said, all right. So, and I'm a big time PvPer. I mean, I love the PvE content as well. And that's the misconception, right? Because my brand is very sports gaming, right? So a lot of the things I do is Madden and NBA 2K and golf and baseball and all this. But when I come home, I'm playing Red Dead Redemption, Witcher 3, World of Warcraft. I somehow got mixed up in this new police simulator that's been wasting like 12 hours of my day. So, it's interesting. And a lot of athletes feel the same way. Like they like to play Call of Duty. They don't want to somebody that plays in the NFL, they don't want to come home and play Madden, because that's what they do for a living. So, and I feel the same way. So I play as much sports games as I need to know the changes and know the meta. But when it's just me, hey, I'm loading up and we're hitting a dungeon or we're hitting a raid or let's load up in the arena. That's kind of where I like to spend my time.
Scott, let's talk about the esports broadcasting side, because we rarely have broadcasters on the show. And I think there's a lot of our listeners who maybe have ambition to be esports broadcasters or want to be on the talent side. What is the path from your perspective to becoming a professional esports broadcaster? I know you came up through traditional sports. Yep. Maybe you can talk about that a little bit and how much translates to esports, but also what you think the path is for people who are interested in that sort of piece of this ecosystem.
Where I see people come from is either the traditional side, and usually that's like your host or your play-by-play guy who has that sort of like technical ability. And then you have someone that kind of comes from the community, right? So they were either a big-time player or a big-time voice in the community or a personality. And then you have the influencer, right? Who goes out there and makes content, for that game. They kind of find their way in. But the interesting thing was I was doing an NBA event for 2K down at Full Sail in Orlando, and they had the Dan Patrick broadcasting school down there. And, they had me talk to some of the students, and I was like, all right, well, what sports are y'all looking to get into? And the guy was like, I want to be a League of Legends play-by-play guy. And I said, all right, now that's how I know things are changing. So I think it's cool that, people that want to get on that path, now they have a path. Before it was just kind of like, hopefully you fall backwards into something. Hopefully somebody sees you, or your community kind of rides with you. Um, and that's a big time, kind of bulletin point to anybody that's in the business right now. Be careful, because there's a lot of up and comers that have actually that technical skill, that are going to be coming behind you looking to take your spot, because it is a zero sum game. And that's where I've kind of been in the esports world. I'm kind of the older end of esports, but I'm super young end of sports. Most of my peers that do play by play for, soccer, football, basketball, baseball, whatever, I mean, they're in their 60s and 70s. So, to have the opportunity to keep working on my skills, it is nice to kind of keep hanging out in that esports space, kind of buying time and waiting time for when's the right transition, whenever that is.
Sorry, Jimmy, go ahead. I don't know if you wanted to jump in.
Yeah, well, just in that same line of advice to the listeners, is there any layer of education versus experience that you could recommend? Because a lot of our listeners certainly are working professionals. We have tons of students here as well that maybe might benefit more from the educational side of how do you get into that line of work as well.
I think any broadcasting school or journalism is good, right? And then also just finding people that you want to emulate and have a cadence behind. I studied Pat Summerall and Vince Scully and Vern Lundquist because that was the cadence that I like. Brent Musburger, I try to emulate them, and there's a lot of soccer commentary that I like because I like their vocabulary. And I borrow, I was going to say steal, but I borrow a few things here and there for my own repertoire. But, I came up just saying yes to things and not saying no to opportunities. People would love to get called up to the Call of Duty League, but how about you just create a community or something on your campus and say, okay, I'm going to throw a Call of Duty tournament with 8 teams and I'm going to commentate it. You got to kind of build up a reel and build up experience. You can do the same thing. You don't have to be at a university. You could, contact your local USO and say, I want to throw a Call of Duty tournament for the troops, and I want to commentate that and stream it out there. It's so much easier. I know we have this crazy saturation of content, but being able to go live is not as cumbersome as it once is. I mean, you get a decent mic, a decent laptop, and a camera, and you're almost ready to rock. So get an Elgato and hook it in, and you're ready to go. So, I think about when we started, in that little ballroom in the Hyatt Regency. We had truckloads of stuff we had to bring in just to put out 240p. Now people are, broadcasting in 1080p and 4K. So I think as the technology advances, certainly the opportunities grow and advance with it as well. You just have to kind of keep your head on a swivel, and networking is always the most important thing, right? I got a lot of jobs based on people that I had known and people that were advocates of me and pushing forward at the NFL and EA Sports and at Twitch. If it wasn't for that partnership, I would still probably be sitting in a cube somewhere making advertising and content for brands. But I say all that you never know when you're working hard. You never know in a blink what's going to be the next opportunity, and that can come around a bend at any point. Your dream job could call you later on today or tomorrow.
Scott, I want to talk about NBA 2K League a little bit because I think they've done a better job at the entertainment side of esports than maybe any other league, right? I would argue more than Call of Duty League or Overwatch League. And it feels like the broadcasts there overperform or outperform sort of expectations, whereas Overwatch League, maybe even Call of Duty League, has underperformed slightly, people's very lofty expectations for those games. What do you think it is? Is it the broadcast, right? Is it how much does the broadcast in your mind play into the success of some of these esports leagues?
Well, first of all, at the NBA 2K League, I think they have to outperform. They have to make more content because they can't just put the name Overwatch up there or Call of Duty, and they know people are going to tune in because the competitive communities on games that come from PC. I know Call of Duty is a certainly a console game, but it has a huge PC kind of foundation and background to that.
And competitive Call of Duty is played on PC.
Yeah,
They all use
right,
controllers, but
exactly.
it's on
Yeah,
PC.
yes, exactly. I didn't know if we were breaking the fourth wall there or anything, but yeah. And so the other thing that I always tell people about stick and ball esports, so the Maddens, the 2Ks, the FIFAs, there's a precedence. There's no precedence to how you call a Call of Duty match. There's no precedence, at least not 50 years of precedence. And when you call a basketball game, people are expecting to hear like a Mike Breen, Jim Nance kind of game. They're expecting to see certain content, that you would see if you were watching an ESPN College Game Day, right? All that shoulder content. And I think with their branding, you see a little bit more content because, a company like AT&T or something, they're used to like sports sponsorships. So kind of working with the NBA 2K League wasn't that far of a reach for brands that are already working with the NBA, right? So they get kind of a trickle down effect for folks that are working with the parent company at the NBA level. It comes down to the WNBA and G League and the NBA 2K League, which Adam Silver, the commissioner, considers their fourth league. So I think it's a combination of things. Brands pushing the NBA 2K League forward to make more shoulder content to get to know the players. But I also think you're in that realm, right? Where you have NBA media people or people that have sports backgrounds from a creative perspective. That's what they know. So they're just doing what they know to do from, their past 20, 30 years of experience, where I think more of Call of Duty and Overwatch and, League of Legends, the gameplay kind of is the hero. It kind of speaks for itself. And a lot of it is because it's not an animation based game. These sports games are animation based, where I think the other games are maybe a bit more skill based. Not that there's not skill gaps, because there is, because I think I'm pretty good at 2K. I think I'm pretty good at Madden. I play any of these guys that are pros that are making six figures a year. They slap me around real good. So I know there's a skill gap, but I think it's a bit harder to perceive. I think everyone thinks they're good at Madden. I think everyone thinks they're good at 2K. And when you talk to someone about League of Legends, they're like, I'm just not that good. I like playing, but I'm just not that good. Right. So there's a lot of factors there that lead to kind of a long way around to talk about, content creation of, the NBA 2K League kind of needs people to buy into their teams and buy into their players a bit more than maybe some of the other leagues.
Do you think long-term that hurts something like the NBA 2K League, meaning by sort of attaching itself to what you call stick and ball sports? We on this show call them meat sports. Like by assuming all of the standards and all of the things that make an NBA broadcast what is an NBA broadcast. If you take all of that and transfer it over to NBA 2K League, do you think short term that helps, right? Like, I think the point you made was insightful. Brands are more comfortable, the broadcasters are more comfortable, but long term, do we shortchange ourselves? Is there any long term risk there by borrowing too heavily from meat sports?
Yeah, I mean, we've had these conversations and strategy meetings around these leagues of, does it need to be a bit more like Fortnite? Do we need to go back to like an NBA Jam kind of like aesthetic where it's like, okay, I can see that this guy's on fire, or maybe this this guy's wearing more of an archer skin, so I know he's like really accurate with his shots or something.
Good ideas.
Yeah, I know. Are we missing something there? But you have two huge schools in these. When you get to meat sports, I guess we'll call it now, simulation and arcade, right? And there's no simulation of League of Legends, right? It's total fantasy, right? There's no one going, that's not the way it really is when I watch football on Sundays. At some point, it's tough, right? So the developers are first trying to make a game for the masses, right? And I think it's maybe an afterthought, just because it's such a small niche of players that compete competitively in a game like Madden or a game like 2K or a game like FIFA. I mean, they like their weekend leagues and they like playing their ultimate teams and getting the rewards and all that kind of stuff. But the thought of winning $1 million prize pool is just like way off. I mean, there's, they know how much time they got to put in to do something like that. So I think you make a valid point. Like, following the status quo, is it growing? Right. Me personally, I think the more you make it like basketball, like what you watch on TNT, you maybe get a fan of the Celtics now want to support the Celtics esports team. But we can get into like camera angles and all that, where Madden and 2K both play behind the player. When we watch it on TV, we like to watch it from the side. I mean, it's a nightmare. You can split a community and an audience, real quick. And I think that's the tough thing for folks like Madden and the NBA 2K League. And we'll throw FIFA in there. I've done a lot of FIFA as well. You're trying to cater to the community, but you're also trying to grow beyond those things where you might get my brother or dad to watch and be able to understand it. And that's the cool thing about Rocket League. I mean, it was very easy. Like when you jumped into Rocket League, and I got to do the first season of their official competitive esports, and the RLCS it was high energy, high impact. There wasn't a precedence. You kind of got it though, because it's cars. They're not going to ball into a goal. So it's sort of like soccer, AK football. So I don't know the answer, right? I mean, that's two totally different things between Madden, which is supposed to be a simulation, and Rocket League, that's supposed to be kind of a fantasy made up sport. Is there something in between there where we're an NBA Jam, like a 3v3 kind of thing, maybe people jumping off trampolines and, something that's a bit more aesthetically pleasing or, kind of more stimulating to the eye? Is that something that's going to help those stick and ball or meat sports grow? I don't know. Someone's got to roll the dice and try,
Rocket League feels a little bit more like the future to me, right? For the points you made just because there's less there's less immediate, like direct overlap. In other words, you're not going to get just soccer fans. You're going to get fans beyond just the people who like watching soccer, but you're also going to capture soccer fans because you can explain to them, hey, this is just like soccer. There's no corollary in the real world, right? Like there's no real world Rocket League, as cool as that would be.
But I mean, the thing is like you don't have many competitive players in Madden, FIFA, and 2K that don't like those sports. You could certainly have people playing Rocket League that could care less about soccer, right? They don't see it as a soccer game. They see it as its own game, right? So, that's tough. I've only met one competitor. His name was Joke. He was a Madden player who did not watch the NFL or football, did not like football, just like playing Madden. And he was a champion at one point. He saw it as a game, right? And what strategies I can do, what glitches can I do to kind of manipulate the, just like a pro player would do, in Call of Duty or Overwatch, trying to find the best spots on a map to make plays.
Well, I like the commentary, Scott, on how the games can be used to attract audiences, not just young, because we always think about attracting a younger audience, but these games in particular, the sports-based games, like you mentioned, your brother or your dad. I attracted my dad to video games because we played Madden together, and he wasn't half bad, right? But we both like watching the Bears on some. Well, we don't like.
I'm a Bears fan too, so let's don't get on a
Bears sufferer.
Yes, I'm a Bears sufferer. Walter Payton was my hero.
Yeah. So that's how I got my dad into it, right? He's from Chicago. Yeah. We wanted in, and he saw me playing with the team, and then we got to play together, and, you attract a fan of that. I will say though, to your point about simulation, I do notice on social a lot of the times, if I see a clip on Call of Duty, or as you called it, one of those skill-based games, it's a cool trick shot. It's something unbelievable. When I see clips of Madden or 2K, at least maybe it says more about who I follow, but it's honestly, it's the, how unrealistic is this play? Look at the ball get passed through his head and bounce, right? And you kind of see a lot of the funny glitches in the sports games. And so I'm not sure what needs to change there.
I do think, not to cut you off, Jimmy, but I do think if they could somehow, and I'm not a gambler, but if they could somehow get a fantasy perspective or a betting perspective to like a Madden, a FIFA, or 2K, like something that's legit, Certainly you got to watch the players that they're not doing, that they're playing their hardest, that they're not trying to, do anything that they shouldn't do. But I think that would open it up to a larger market. And you saw some of that when we had those COVID years, because I was as busy as I ever was during those COVID years. I was calling a Clemson, Florida State college basketball game. It got canceled right before tip off. And then the next thing you know, I'm busy. I'm working like 2 or 3 shows a day, because we're putting things up on ESPN and stuff like that because they have no content. There's no sports going on. So they saw some success and they saw some growth. Even that Madden show that I was on the NFL Network, it started off with 40,000 concurrent. They had it on a Friday night. They moved it to a Saturday at noon. And by the end of the thing, it had like 400,000 concurrent that were watching this Madden show. Because for some reason people are like, oh, it's people that aren't wearing suits and ties on TV. We're in hoodies and Jordans, and people are just like, what the heck is going on here? So, I think if you kind of can break the mold, like Paul was talking about earlier, it could be a gamble, no pun intended, but I think, it could grow the esport as long as you can do it in a positive way.
Scott, I want to bring back a sort of a topic that's recurring on this podcast, which is esports and the Olympics, because I think you probably have an interesting take or a different viewpoint on this. Is it something you want to see? And if we see it, do you want it to be limited to the sports, like to the stick and ball or the meat sports? Or do you think it has to go beyond that? Or do you think we don't need the Olympics at all? As someone who's, done sports and esports.
Yeah, I mean, I love FIFA eWorld Cup. I think that's amazing. We got FIBA Esports, which is the Federation of International Basketball. It's cool to see those countries go against each other. I think there's something there. The question is, just like the Winter Olympics is, 2 years off, is there some way where we can it can be its kind of own esports Olympics, right? Where I don't think it's coincides, with the Summer Olympics or Winter Olympics. Is it something that kind of, not saying shoulder content, but is it something that's kind of a supplement to it? Because I would hate to limit it. And I'm a sports guy. I would hate to limit it to just the sports games because, I told you DJ Wheat was one of my buddies. I grew up watching him broadcast StarCraft for a long time. And if you could have some random American somehow beat one of those legends over there in StarCraft, it kind of would turn the world on its head. It's still that way now when a North American, org actually plays well against some of these long-standing, European esports organizations. I mean, how much better would it be? It's kind of like the way we are in the World Cup right now, where, the USA is getting better at football, AKA soccer, but it's something like what esports, you could kind of see that grow, and kind of get a whole country behind it. Because there's a lot of people that really will go. I can't believe I'm saying this again. We have a lot of people that don't care about soccer or football, but they will watch the USA play in the World Cup. They will watch the USA bobsledding team or pole vaulting or whatever, right? They don't even care about any of those. It's just like a country pride thing. Could esports grow by trying to get more on the world stage? I think the answer would be an emphatic yes. There's just certain countries, and maybe USA is one of them, where I hope we wouldn't get just flat out embarrassed in some of these esports, because it's a global, Overwatch and stuff like that. It's global. I know we got a lot of our leagues in North America, but a lot of the talent is still coming from overseas for sure.
Scott, does the world stage that you mentioned create problems for your business also, though, in the sense that, like, we're seeing more and more tournaments, for example, like the World Championships being held in Singapore, or, for mostly Asian audiences, with most, like, League of Legends is a perfect example, right? I don't know if there are any really competitive North American teams. And so you get these, finals with a bunch of sort of teams from Asia, and the championships are in Asia because that's where most of the audience is. Like, is this, from the North American perspective, how do you think about that? And do you see more opportunities going there because the audiences there are so much bigger, or you don't see it as a threat?
I try not to be so American, right? Where you're like, oh man, we gotta we gotta set the table so the USA can be competitive. I think you kind of have to get out of that mindset and just kind of tip your cap to, you know, we're nowhere close to certain countries that had 15, 20-year jump on us as far as competitive esports goes. I said, 20 years ago in a Hyatt Regency basement base, like, people would laugh at that. I never told anybody I was doing that when I was doing that. A lot of the events that I did was, we traveled to Germany and Korea and stuff like that because that's where the events were. Um, and to go back to branding, that's the only reason it's kind of grown in America, because it has become a business. These organizations have become a business. They see how big the Dallas Cowboys can get, and if they have an esports organization, how big can that get? How big complexity can get being supported by some of these, bigger professional organizations. But I think it's good. I mean, I think a domination by the internationals is something that's good for America to kind of play that underdog role and see if they can get some people that are interested in kind of rising up to the challenge. And do we have brands and organizations that, want to put the training in place to, try to get to that point? Do we want to try to recruit people? America is a place where, if you want to come become a citizen, you can. You can come over here, dual citizenship or whatever, just like they do in, world football. I could see the same thing in something like League of Legends.
Scott, I have two last questions before I hand it over to Jimmy and everyone's favorite new segment, Judge Jimmy's cross-examination. But one silly question, one serious question. Serious question is, we had Arnold Herr, CEO of Gen G, on the podcast, right? And he talked a lot about the struggle with esports orgs to monetize. From your perspective, what do you think needs to be done? Because you're sort of in the middle of this, right? Like the people casting, broadcasting, putting together these esports events and putting them out to the world, right? A lot of, if those groups, if people like you don't succeed, esports fails as a whole, right? So what do you think the industry needs to do better over the next 5 years or 10 years from a monetization perspective or from an organization perspective in your mind?
I mean, is any of our top companies in the world making profits? I don't know. I mean, I know when it comes to the balance sheet and the bottom dollar for a lot of esports organizations, it's not pretty. I do think you're getting some, smart-minded people that are coming from big time players like, PepsiCo or Budweiser, that can help these esports organizations. I think you need that mind power. I think you need MBAs, people that business is what they do, because we spent so many times where everything I work on feels like a college project, right? It feels like a garage band, right? We're just bunch of passionate people with a bunch of different skill sets. How do we make it happen? But I think we're growing to a point where you have to kind of know this is your weakness, right? You need to bring in people that have those strengths, that have those, years of networking to kind of explain why esports is good, why it's something that you should invest in, and why it personally is a long play. I mean, I spoke 45 minutes ago about people laughing at the NFL. What a business that is. And they make money hand over fist, and their owners make money hand over fist. The organizations continue to grow in their worth. The players make a lot of money. So is that a blueprint for what esports should do? I don't know, but I know that you need smart people that are kind of starting to step into this. And I see smart people all the time on LinkedIn that are leaving these amazing brands to be like, oh, I'm now with FaZe Clan, or I'm with 100 Thieves, or I'm with Optic Gaming now. Like, and you're like, these are people that kind of see that, hey, if they can jump onto something that maybe 10, 20, 30 years from now can grow 10 to 40x. So, although it looks struggling now and we lose a lot of organizations that just continue to kind of run out of money or passion, or just don't have kind of that backing. But we see that with brands all the time. Or Shark Tank, and all this kind of stuff, where people that got great ideas, but they got the wrong people that are kind of pushing it. Every organization needs sort of that Mark Cuban or Jerry Jones, or, name kind of that spearhead or front person to kind of take it from, just an organization to now like a global brand, that people want to work with and people want to be a part of. And I think you'll see kind of a survival of the fittest. We're starting to see some organizations die away, while we're seeing other organizations start to have some very serious growth and start to kind of dominate the space.
Scott, one last question, and then I'm going to hand it over to Jimmy. And this is maybe the most important question. Let me rephrase it. What are you doing, Scott, to make sure WoW Esports is going to be the dominant esport for the next, decade or so? And why aren't we there yet?
That's tough. Blizzard is, it's tough. Blizzard does great with Overwatch. I guess they just never saw, serious and silly answer at the same time. Warcraft is not a balanced game. It's not balanced. It's hard for it to be an esport because it's just not balanced, right?
To be fair, neither was Overwatch when they were for most of the first two seasons. So
that's true, and it is complete chaos when you're watching like 3v3s. Now I do like what they've done with like the mythics. I think that's kind of cool. World first. For some reason, I can't take my eyes off watching that kind of stuff when it comes to Worldcraft. The question is, will there be a WoW 2? That's more kind of balanced. But we've seen Guild Wars, and you've seen Rifts, and whatever Amazon tried to do. I played that one for a little bit too, but it just doesn't work. Yeah, New World, it just doesn't work. So although I love watching it, it's tough for it to grow because it's just a completely unbalanced. And most people that play World of Warcraft don't even know their characters, let alone watching it to kind of know what's going on. I know when a pally bubbles, and you can see hills and stuff like that, but I think it's so complicated and so in depth, from 20 years of talents in gaming, that it's just impossible to kind of know what's going on, even if you play the game as religiously as I do.
Love the answer. I'm just going to hand it over to Jimmy for everyone's favorite new segment. It's Judge Jimmy's cross-examination. The way this works is going to ask a few rapid-fire questions, Scott, to get to know you better as a gamer, as a person. They're really easy. They're rapid-fire. Judge Jimmy, take it away.
No stress here, Scott.
Jimmy, I'm nervous.
Quick answers. Don't worry about it. It'll be fun. Easiest one first. What's your favorite video game of all time? That actually might be a hard one out for some
Bionic people. Commando on the NES is a side scroller. You had like this go-go gadget arm that you could.
You had this locked and loaded. There was no hesitation there.
Yes, that's true. Yes, Metal Gears were great as well. Those are probably my favorite. Nowadays, it's probably like Red Dead Redemption or something like that, because I just love open world. Let me do whatever I want to do. If I want to hunt for 2 hours, let me do that.
I want to apply the similar question into your work now. What's your favorite game? And this could be a video game or a traditional sports, because I know you do both. What's your favorite game to broadcast?
Oh man, probably FIFA. Like, I don't want to hear a British person call college football. Most people don't want to hear an American call FIFA. So it breaks my heart, because I love the pace and the cadence of just world football, just a FIFA. It's just kind of relaxing, where, when you're playing Madden with basically no dead ball or something like that, it's just rapid fire. And of course, we know how fast the game of basketball is. So there's just something about FIFA where I'm just kind of chilling, but yeah, nobody wants to hear my Anglo pronunciations of most of these players in FIFA.
All right. Last one for you, Scott. Your favorite, this could be a TV show or a movie that shares IP with a video game.
Man. Yeah. That's a tough one. I don't want to go to Warcraft, but it's on my iPad. For some reason, when I can't find something to choose, I go to the Warcraft movie. Was it great? On a 5 stars, maybe it was 2 stars, maybe it was 1.5, but there's just something about, just something about finally they made a movie, right? They've been talking
You're going to
about it.
get so many comments on this episode just because of this.
I admit the movie was terrible. For some reason on a plane, I just go back to it. I don't know why. Maybe it's because I wish I was sitting at home playing Warcraft. Maybe
for punishment.
Maybe it itches, it itches something that I can't scratch when I'm on the road.
Awesome. I appreciate it, Scott. That's it for Judge Jimmy. Back to you, Paul.
Scott,
I feel like I failed there. I feel like I had a great failure.
Yeah, awesome answers. First of all, just wanted to say, love the work you're doing with Philips Norelco. People who watch this podcast, it's what I shave with. So my beautiful face, my handsome, rugged, good looks. This is why. But I love sort of the feel good, play good, that whole philosophy. I think there's so much to it. So congratulations on the work there. For people who want to find out more, find you, follow you, get sort of news on what's going on with this partnership, where can they find more or follow you?
Phillips.com/OneBlade. That's the first place to go. The cool thing is, I just introduced my nephew they have a One Blade that's like kind of like your first shaver, right? It's like you can do no harm with this thing, like this is a great practice to be able to look good, because it is so important. I never really thought about that stuff when I was in middle school or high school or whatever, but it's just so important because we live in this Instagram streaming world, where you're kind of feel like you're constantly in a content, right? You're constantly under a microscope. You never know who's going to come up to you and take a selfie with you, or ussy, or whatever they want to call it nowadays. So that's a great place to go. And that's really what we're out here doing with Philips Norelco, is just trying to, when everybody looks good, the water rises, right? Everybody, it kind of raises us up, and through brands like that, it really kind of defeats the stigma of we're not in our basements. I'm in an Airstream. Jimmy's in a cool place. I don't know what fantasy world Paul's in, but like we're not in our basements, and most gamers have a plethora of hobbies. I mean, I fly airplanes. I run into people that love to go overlanding and rock climbing and all these kind of things. And I think that's the way that younger nature is. And that's why I certainly believe that probably mobile esports is probably going to be the thing that kind of takes over in the next 10 years or so, because we I love to seclude myself, right, and play games. I don't think that's the people that are coming up. The next gamer is not a secluder. They're very much a social. I want to get out there. Tell me what I can do when I'm riding on the bus to school, or tell me what I can do when I'm taking the train on a commute. So it's just kind of cool to seeing like the things that we all love just becoming more legit, and brands like Philips and Norelco are certainly helping us do that. And there's many great brands that are doing that. And so without them, it's kind of hard to move forward to kind of entice people with these kind of competitions and make great content.
One more time, Scott, remind me where people can go.
Phillips.com/OneBlade. And you can find me at Scott Cole Show. If there's anything I can do for anybody, whether it's networking or help them move forward or just get them connected, I answer a ton of questions, and I find a lot of joy and pride in just kind of seeing people go from, having their first stream to next thing you know, they got more followers than I do. So, and it happens in a blink, and that brings a lot of great joy to me to keep moving the ball forward.
Scott, thank you so much. Really appreciate having you on the show. Just a reminder, some housekeeping, guys, for our audience. Don't forget to follow Business of Esports everywhere. We're Biz Esports on YouTube, on LinkedIn, on TikTok, on Instagram, on Twitter, you name it. We put content on all these platforms. Also, don't forget, show up for our live stream every Wednesday, 2:30 p.m. Eastern time. It's all the news from the last week. It's a bigger cast. It's a lot of fun. We get to do it live. You get to come and ask questions, challenge us, disagree with the prophet, as crazy as that might be. But it's a lot of fun, and we encourage everyone to show up. Scott, thank you. Jimmy, thank you as always. To our audience, thank you, guys. Don't forget the most important thing, guys. The future is fun. We'll see you next week.